Hello, everyone. So I'm Bruno Basto. I work with the front-end infrastructure team. And when I submitted this presentation, I didn't know what the party was going to be about. So I'll probably, if I did, I would probably have sent like this. But yeah, so this presentation is about showing what we're working on in the single-page application experience in Liferay, and also show how we can deploy like very fast and responsive single-page applications just using the knowledge you already have as a Portlet developer. Last year, I was here talking about what makes a good single-page applications, all the theory involved, and all the concepts that we consider make a good single-page application. But this year, I want to talk about it in a more like practical way, show how to do it, how to deploy a portlet, for example, that leverages all this functionality. So we do some things like so often, so repeatedly, that sometimes we take it for granted. Like, have you ever thought about all that happens when you type a URL in a browser? So basically, when you type a URL in a browser, the browser will have to parse that HTML that it receives from the server. And then every time it encounters a CSS or a JavaScript, for example, it will have to download those and parse them. And actually, this process of parsing the HTML is more complex than it seems. Like, the browser has to translate the bytes and the characters into tokens, and then into nodes, and then it will put those together in a tree structure that's called the document object model. And it will do the same for CSS. So it will construct this tree structure called the CSS object model. And then the browser will have to put those together in another tree structure called the render tree. And along the way, it can get blocked. So every time the browser needs to download a CSS or a JavaScript, it blocks the process from being completed. So, but after the browser has all that and it's formed the render tree, it will start a process called layout. This is when the browser calculates where each element goes on the page. So it does that for every node on the page, and it starts by the parent nodes, and then it works its way down to the children nodes. So after the browser has figured out where each element goes on the page, then it's ready to actually paint the pixels in front of you. So this is a complex process. It's actually more involved in that, but we have to keep in mind that it's painful. It takes a lot of processing for the browser to complete all that. And in Dxp, we try to minimize how often that happens by introducing SPA. So in Dxp, SPA comes enabled by default. You can even disable it using just a portal property, or you can disable it just for your portlet using a notation. And because the SPA functionality is brought by an OSI module, you can actually disable it just using the UI on the control panel. You can just deactivate the module. And you can configure a bunch of stuff like the cache expiration time. You can configure if there's going to be cache or no cache, or how long the cache takes to expire. You can configure the timeout that it takes for the AJAX request to timeout. You can configure even some selectors. So say you have some links that you don't want to go through SPA. You want just a regular navigation then. You can configure selectors for that. But how do I deploy a portlet that's capable of SPA, that leverages this SPA functionality? So there are several ways of creating a portlet. You can use the plugins SDK. You can use the Liferay Developers Studio. But I like to use I'm a command line guy, so I like to use the Blade CLI. And Blade is just a command line tool that helps you create really fast portlets, and it provides some boilerplates for that too. So if you want to create a MVC portlet, you can just type Blade create and say that you are using the MVC portlet template. So Blade's going to create all the boilerplate for you. In this example, it created an empty MVC portlet class. And a JSP. So in my example, I just put like a very simple JSP. All it has like a text and a link, and the link points to another JSP. So in this other JSP, I do basically the same. I just point to the previous view so we can keep navigating, clicking on the link. And then you just like blade deploy, and the portlet's going to be there. So let's see that in action. So here's my portlet. And it's basically an empty class, so there's nothing fancy here. And all I have is like an empty class and 2 JSPs, right? To show how much the SPA can improve the navigation, can make it faster, I'm going to leave it disabled for now. And I'm going to deploy it. So if I type blade deploy, I'll have my portlet deployed. OK, so here's the portlet. It's really simple. And I have SPA disabled now. So if I click on this link, let it just load. OK, so if I click on this link, we can see that the page actually reloads. And it's just the regular navigation, right? So I'm on local host connection, so we cannot see like how long it takes because it's too fast on localhost. But let's just simulate a 3G connection, for example. So if I click here, this is like the regular navigation with no SPA. So it takes about 5 seconds. Let me see if I can do like a slower connection and see how long it takes. Yeah, so this is, in this regular navigation, it is doing all that I explained earlier. So it's on every click that I do, it's retrieving all that HTML, it's parsing everything, it's checking if there's external resources, and it's parsing the CSS, it's constructing the DOM, it's constructing the CSS object model render tree, and it takes like about 10 seconds for the page to load. And this is a very simple page, right? There's nothing here. Now I'm going to enable SPA, and we can see if that improves anything. So let me just set this to true. Oops. And deploy it. Just a second. Can you see it? OK. So I'm going to reload the page. OK, so now I'm going to simulate like a slow connection. Let's try a 2G connection. This is even slower than what we had before for when we didn't have SPA. And before, it took like 10 seconds. And I think here it took like 3 seconds, tops. Yeah, so we can see that it's a lot faster than it is with a regular navigation. And I didn't have to do anything, right? So this is a really simple portlet. All I have here is like a regular render URL, which we are all used to writing. And by default, Dxp will track all portlet URLs, render URLs, action URLs, layout URLs. So, and every navigation, every click on any link will go through SPA. Even form submissions will also go through SPA. So here I have a form. So if I like just fill it, oops. And submit it. So it went through the SPA lifecycle, and the page wasn't reloaded. I can even upload files just using the SPA. So let me put a slightly faster connection because it's upload. I'm going to upload a large file. And so I'm going to upload this file, and while I'm uploading, I can actually navigate, and the upload is going to still be going on. So I can like multitask and do other stuff while the upload is going on. So this is really nice. So yeah. And what's good about the way we implemented the SPA functionality is that I didn't have to change anything for that to happen, right? I'm writing Portlet the way I'm used to. I didn't have to learn Angular or React or anything like that, and it just works. So the way the SPA works is when the user clicks on a link, basically, like we intercept the click on that link, and instead of just letting the browser navigate using a regular navigation, we prevent that click, that navigation from happening, and we trigger an AJAX request to the same URL instead. So if that new page that I'm navigating to has new resources that did parsing, like new CSS or new JavaScript, for example, DXP will parse those, and once it's ready, parsing those, we are actually ready to show the new screen to the user. And the engine behind that, it's Senna. Senna is an open source project maintained by Liferay, and it provides all the features you need to deliver a very good single page application. But we don't actually need to learn about Senna to benefit from SPA. So Senna is already configured and installed in Dxp. So all you have to do is just write portlets like you're used to. Here I have like a comparative video showing how applying Senna improved the navigation in Liferay Dxp. This is like simulating a slow connection. The first part of the video is showing how it was before we applied SPA, so on a 3G connection. And it used to take like 20 seconds to load this page. More than 20, actually. So on the same connection speed, using Senna.js, we can see that it takes a lot less time. In this example, I think it takes like 8 seconds. So in half the time, you can see the same screen. We actually measured how much data we saved by using SPA in Dxp. So before, like a regular navigation for that page, for example, used to take like 1 megabyte. And after applying Senna, it now takes like 20 kilobytes. It's a lot less than before. And in fact, the average navigation using Senna consumes a lot less bandwidth. So, like on average, before we used to consume like 1 megabyte, and after it's less than 350. This is great, but we're always thinking of ways to improve that. So one thing that you'll notice if you inspect one request from Senna is that we request the entire HTML on every navigation. So it's not ideal, but why we do that? Why don't we just request a JSON file? The reason for that is that by using a server-side only templated language like JSP, we cannot just receive the data we need and parse it on the client. Like JSP is a server-side only template language. So to solve that, we are introducing a concept called hybrid rendering. So basically, hybrid rendering is a concept where the server and the client share templates. So if we have a template language that can compile to Java, for example, and to JavaScript, for example, my client-side code and my server-side code, they both know how to render my views. So I can just transfer data between server and client and trust that they know how to render that data. One of the templates language that provide that are the Closure templates by Google, also known as Soy templates. And Soy templates provides just that. So that, it can compile to JavaScript and to Java, and we can use that to leverage this hybrid rendering technique. So in Dxp, we added the Soy portlet, which is just an MVC portlet that can handle Soy templates. And you can use that, create a portlet just using the Blade CLI. And it works the same way as the MVC portlet. So it's just a regular portlet. But now you can write portlets using the Closure templates, or Soy templates, which are very similar to HTML. But now we can render that on the client. So by using the hybrid rendering technique, we were able to make navigations that consume like less than 1 kilobyte of data. So in this example, like navigating from one page to the other, we only needed like 322 bytes of data, and we were able to render the page the same way. And if we combine that with Metal.js, which uses incremental DOM, we can have like very fast navigations that transfer minimal amount of data, and it's also smart enough to only update the parts of the page that needs to be updated. So let me show you an example. So here I have like this is a Soy portlet, and I have some images here, right? So if I navigate, like when I click here, I'm navigating, you can see the URL changes. But I'm only requesting a JSON file. So it's a lot less data than just requesting the entire HTML. And if I enable the paint flashing, Chrome will show me what's actually changing on the page, which pixels the browser needed to repaint in order to show the new content. So we can see that by navigating, the URL is changing, but the browser only is painting what needs to be changed. So you can see the image on the middle is not even being touched. This is very nice because it provides like very fast navigations, just updating the minimum amount of pixels possible. And you can actually leverage that functionality and build more stuff with that. One of our partners, SMC, they created a plugin on top of the SPA functionality where you can actually do transitions when you navigate from one page to the other. This is really nice because since the page doesn't reload, you can do stuff like that. And they actually provided that as a plugin on the marketplace, and it's free to download. So just as a recap, let's see the steps you need to do to create a portlet that leverages the SPA functionality. So it's very simple. So all you have to do is like, you create your portlet. You don't need to do anything on the back end. You create a view using the same thing you already know how to do, like a render URL, and you deploy it. These are the 3 steps you need to do to deploy a portlet that's capable of SPA. One of the questions that I get most often is people hear about Senna.js and they want to know how they can learn how to use Senna to have SPA in Dxp. You don't actually need to know anything about Senna. You can keep developing portlets the way you're used to and gain the SPA functionality. And with SPA, you have, by using Senna, we have like all the nice features in SPA out of the box. So we have SEO and bookmarkability. So we navigate using SPA, and every navigation actually reflects on a URL change. So if I navigate using SPA and copy a link and share it to a friend, that link is going to reflect the same thing that I was seeing before. So we have like also history management. So you can actually navigate back and forth using the browser history. And Senna is going to track those navigations and do those in SPA instead of just allowing the browser to navigate normally. And because we don't have to parse every resource on the head of the page every time, we consume a lot less bandwidth. So we don't have to download all those CSS, like all those frameworks we include, none of that. We have cacheable screens, which is configurable, so you can actually cache locally your screens, so you don't have to reload content that you know is not going to change. And we provide UI feedback, so it's a very discrete loader that the user can keep navigating while the content is loading. And finally, we have like a very faster navigation, again, without having to learn anything new. And that's basically it. Thank you.
He was even too fast for me.
Sorry?
Sorry, you shouldn't be sorry. Any questions about single-page applications? Yes, even fast. It's unbelievable. I get to you, sir.
The question would be how the Senna.js and that single application thing works with other frameworks like Angular or whatever. Is there jQuery, whatever?
So yeah, if you're using Angular, you can use just the routing from Angular and don't use Senna. But Senna is actually like different from Angular. So Angular is like an entire framework that does a lot of stuff. Senna is just like a very small utility. It's like 8 kilobytes of code, and it's responsible only for routing. So that's all the responsibility of Senna is just doing the routing. So you can actually, if you want, you can just use the Angular, the routing from Angular, and everything that Angular provides, or you can use Senna and integrate with Angular. So Senna is very extensible. You can write screens, which are like the class that defines the behavior of what happens once the Ajax comes back. So if you want to do something else than what Senna does by default with the Ajax that comes back, you can implement your own screen and treat that. So say when the Ajax comes back, you want to do a new Angular component. You can do that if you want.
Hi. If I understood well, Senna is not calling, not getting the whole page from the server. So the portal will not render all the page. For example, if you have several portlets in the page, and you click on the submit button in one of the portlets, will the other portlets be called to render again or not?
Yes. So Senna is actually requesting all the HTML of the page. So all the portlets will be re-rendered. Okay. It's going to happen the same thing that would happen if Senna wasn't enabled, but instead of doing a regular navigation, it's going through Ajax instead.
Okay, so the difference is that it will not load all the resources that the HTML refers to, right?
Yes, because a lot of the resources usually are on the head of the page, and those don't need to be parsed again. So If I don't change the head of the page, I don't need to download those resources again. And even you can actually annotate some resources. So say even if they are inside the body of the page, for example, you can say they are permanent resources. So when Senna sees a permanent resource, it knows it doesn't need to be parsed again. So permanent resources are like frameworks, like jQuery. You don't need to parse jQuery every time. jQuery is just like a framework that provides some functionality, so it doesn't depend on which page it is. So if you have resources like that, you can annotate, and it's not going to reparse on every navigation.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any more questions while I'm going down the stairs? I'll walk around.
So if I understood right, with Senna, you have to re-render all the portlets, but you can avoid that by using soy templates, right?
Yeah, so soy is like a proposal we are adding because with regular portlets, if you are using like JSP as the template language, we cannot like trust the client to render the portlet. So there's no way the portlet can render a JSP just using JavaScript, right? So if you use soy portlets, soy is a template language that can do that. So if you compile your soy to JavaScript, you can actually re-render your entire portlet just with the client, just with your JavaScript code.
Yeah. One is independent from the other. So you can use soy templates without using Senna.
Yes. No, so Senna works both ways. So it works with the regular navigation. And if you use soy, it works even better because we don't have to request the entire HTML. So both kind of navigation works.
Okay, thank you.
So only one more question regarding that. So is there any limitation to soy templates and Metal.js, or can I achieve the same functionality regarding JSPs, for example?
What do you mean? Like?
So is there any limitation in using soy templates, or can I achieve exactly the same thing using GSP or soy templates and Metal.js? So is there any key difference that make me go one way or the other?
No, there are no limitations, but if you have like multiple portlets on a page, right? So if you have a JSP portlet and right next to it a soy portlet, for example, you're not going to render both of them when you navigate. So at least not by default. So some people use IPC, right? Inter-portlet communication. So if you only update your soy portlet, for example, then your JSP portlet may be out of date if you don't update that. So, but if you don't use IPC, then it's a much faster navigation just using the soy portlet.
Okay, so I can start to use soy and Metal.js for everything?
Yes.
Cool.
All right, thank you. We have 1 minute left, and if there's no other question, then I would like to ask you to give Bruno a welcome applause.
Thank you.